Hey, I'm the Multifarious fisherman. This is 7 Fish. I am backlit again. It's kind of what we do. Overcast day. I'm out here. It's August. Time when everybody says the fishing is terrible. I got a little guy. Probably show it to you. Real little guy. Smacked it though. Hit it hard. Little fella. I really just got here. Just got started. Conventional wisdom says, oh, don't bother. There's a lot of people out here fishing. A guy out in the boat actually caught one on a chatterbait. Just a little guy. I know that because he was yelling it across to his friends on the bank. I just had another bass, about the same size as the last one. Nothing to be too excited about. There's a truck. We've caught a couple. Spinner. Just walking, covering water quickly. Nothing to be too excited about yet. Still a little guy. Little largemouth, third one of the day. See if there's another one in there. Nothing there. Came back with some weeds, had a really small bass chasing me on that cast. Just curious. Not an eater. People talk a lot about gear ratio on reels, and they know a high gear ratio is faster and a low gear ratio is slower, and some guys even know kind of why you want a fast one or a slow one. But what most people don't understand is the multiplier. So your gear ratio is the 7.3 to 1, 6.4 to 1, 8.1 to 1. Gear ratio is the number of times the line rotates the spool for one crank of the handle. So multifarious, what are you talking about the multiplier? Well, that number, there's a fish. Another little guy. It's all about the squeakers today. So what's a multiplier? Well, your gear ratio, that number really doesn't mean squat if you don't know what the diameter of the spool is. And the spool diameter, though they look the same on a lot of, your bait cast reels, all your bass size bait cast reels look very similar, but they can hold different amounts of line. And not only can they hold different amounts of line, but the line size will make a difference in your retrieve rate. Time to move. As left-handed hunter would say, stick and move, stick and move. We're trying to cover water. We're just trying to get in front of a bunch of fish. So far, that's been the strat. We aren't slaying big fish, but it has been the strat. I'm gonna put you in a tree. Okay, so why would line diameter matter? Reels will tell you their gear ratio. Some of them even will give you a number of inches of line on the retrieve, but that number is with the spool completely full. Right now my spool is almost completely full. When I reel this, I'm picking up a certain amount of line per crank. That was a long cast. At the end of that long cast, my spool is 2/3. So now all of a sudden, my diameter of my spool has reduced. Well, if you reduce the diameter of the spool, you reduce the amount of line coming in per crank. My gear ratio tells me one part of an equation, but if you don't know the other part of the equation, you don't know how fast you're picking line up. I want that reel-to-reel line up out at the end of my cast when I'm using it and not worry so much about how fast it is when it's full. Just to exaggerate, give you the idea of how much it can change. I did this with a bass size reel. I spooled some 20-pound braid in a reel that had a very high retrieve rate and turned one turn of the crank with 20-pound line, and it was 41 inches, which is what the manufacturer claimed. I did the same thing with 65-pound braid, and when it was full, it picked up 41 inches of line. Then I peeled out the amount of a long cast to give myself an idea what the retrieve rate was at that point. And in the 20-pound braid, my 41-inch retrieve reel at the end of a long cast was picking up 33, which is good, but it's not 41. When I used the 65, pulled the same amount of line out, one long cast, the amount of line left in that reel was very minimal. I almost spooled it at 65-pound braid at the length of a long cast. That reel with one turn of the crank picked up 21 inches of line. So it's a significant difference based on what line you're running, the diameter of it, how far you're casting, what kind of bait you're running. Well, kind of bait doesn't change your retrieve rate, but it matters more with some baits. The buzz bait, if I make a long cast, I want a high retrieve rate to get that buzz bait to the surface quick, because the buzz bait underwater doesn't do you a lot of good. I appreciate your time, appreciate you coming out to watch, and we'll see you next week.